Welcome to DnDTime Talks, the show where we discuss all things Dungeons and Dragons. I am Pete.
I'm Jeremy. Pete, I can't help but notice that either your webcam is too high or mine is too low. Because our heads are in different places.
Let me sit up straighter. Maybe that will help.
That might help. Hello, chat! Hello, the Forgotten One, Blood News, Hello, Dude, Bionic Sheba, and I know you're there, Mac.
Hello, those in the shadows.
Oh, yeah, and everyone else. Hello.
Yeah.
Oh, Data, what are you doing over here?
Hello to Data as well. How's Data doing, Jeremy?
Data is doing pretty okay. Data, say hello to the camera.
Do you have the Data cam? Do you have the Data cam right now?
Yes, it is on, and he is
great.
looking almost at it. Good job, Data. You're a cat. Yeah. He's a good boy.
All right, and as the Data cam recedes, you can all now tune out. The show is over.
Yep, he's gone now. All right, There goes everything. There goes everything, folks. My girlfriend walked in. He's gone. All right, well, Pete, what are we doing?
Tonight we're talking about, we're doing something a little bit different than we'd normally do, but I'm very much here for it. I think it's going to be cool. We're talking about legendary magic items and kind of how to design them, and the way that we plan to do that is by, I think Shiva said, Brews 2.0. Yeah, in many ways, this will be a little bit like a Brews, but we'll also just be talking about our design philosophy as we discuss making legendary items by making one of our Bartholomew's choices for the player who most recently, in Pete and Jeremy's D&D time, commissioned a Bartholomew's choice, which is, for anyone unfamiliar, a very high-powered, like, artifact tier item that players can get by spending an immense amount of money.
Yeah, and of course the player is Max Meister in the chat. For his character, Michael Verity. Now, of course, if you guys have stuff you want to add, please feel free to type along in the chat. Pete and I are going to be talking about like our design process and our design philosophies, how we go about getting a first draft, because that's what this is. This is a first draft. For D&D time, we're making a personalized legendary magic item that will make the player happy, that will make us happy as DMs to run for, and that won't feel oppressive to other players. Of course, so it's a draft state after this. There's going to be a lot of back and forth after the show, and we might not even come out of this with a working prototype. But we'll see.
I would actually say that is likely the case. But we're also just going to be talking about, some of our just thoughts on, artifact magic items, legendary tier magic items in general. And also, I would like to say, if you want to ask a question of Pete and Jeremy, you can do so on Discord, because at the end of DnDTime Talks, as always, we will be doing our Ask Pete and Jeremy segment, where we answer questions from chat. Sometimes they're strange, sometimes they're goofy, sometimes they're related to D&D. So whatever you guys want to ask us, you can do so on our Discord, which is located and linked below the stream.
Yeah. So, without further ado, let's dive right in. Let's start talking about legendary, that is, artifact tier magic items. So the first thing about artifact tier magic items is they're always incredibly ancient. Like Maddie Morgs' 11 months of subscribing. Thank you, Maddie. See, that was my segue right there. Thank you for your support. It's almost a year. Holy shit.
Maddie Morgs, thank you so much. I wonder what's in store for the next one. I do too. I can't wait to find out.
Probably more D&D time.
That's probably what it is. It's Dungeons and Dragons. A lot of that in store. But yes, Jeremy, as much as you were intentionally doing that segue, which is very good, I think you were getting. We should start though. We should start talking. Yeah, I think you were getting at a cool point, which was that legendary items, they're always not necessarily ancient, but they're always righteous. They're always really cool. You should never finish making a legendary item, and this is maybe the most important thing we'll say, as much as it seems obvious. You should never finish making a legendary item, and you're like,
Exception. The Sovereign Glue. That's the only exception.
No, that item is absolutely incredible. There's no Jeremy. The fact that you thought of that out of all things shows how amazing the Sovereign Glue is. And the thing about the Sovereign Glue that's really interesting, and I think we'll get into this in a moment too, is that it's got something it can do that's completely unique. It sticks something to something, which is what glue does, but it's unstickable. It's just those two things are now attached, and that's the end of the story, which is something that no spell in the game can do, no effect other than the Sovereign Glue can do it. So even though it's a very simple effect, it is a very potent and legendary feeling one, I think.
Yeah, and that's a kind of a key concept to legendary. Really, we're looking at legendary to artifact level items. They break the mold. More often than not, they are incredibly powerful mechanically, but beyond that, they do a mechanic that doesn't otherwise work or really exist in the game. And that's not true for every single one, but for a lot of legendary and artifact tier items, that's what they do. Take the Vorpal Sword, for example. It decapitates people if you crit them. That's something that nothing else does. It's just not a part of the game, but because of that item, it is a part of the game. And that's what makes it so special and legendary, and why people know what the Vorpal Sword does.
And beyond the mechanics of it, because that's going to be something that's very important when designing legendary items, are discussing the mechanics. It's also important for a legendary item that you're designing to have a story to it. That story can be in the design of the item. As a matter of fact, it probably should be in the design of the item. But it's definitely, in my opinion, a very wasted opportunity. Maybe a little bit less so in DnDTime because of just the nature of the way the game is run. But in a long-term campaign, if you're designing a legendary item, it's definitely wasted if you don't know why that item was made, who made it, how it was made, things of this nature, so that you can tell an interesting story and that it feels like the players have the weight of history and the significance of this thing when they pick it up, beyond just, it's a sword that hits really good. It's a sword that means something.
Yeah, and that's something that is super relevant, because I was actually recently, for the new website revamp for the DnDTime website, I was going through the old Bartholomew's Guide to Enchanting, and was looking at Inferno, the Mountain's Core, which is our example magic item in that, and how to create a magic item. And that's a really cool item because Inferno, the Mountain's Core, the name gives you a bit of the story from it. It was forged from the iron inside of a volcano. You get fire, you get inside of mountain, just in the name. So beyond just the name of an item, just the idea of it should start to tell its story.
Yes. And finding ways to blend your game mechanics and blend the story of the item and like the description of it and all of that, that's the trick of making cool legendary items. That's the main thing that you're going to be trying to do and working towards.
Absolutely.
Also, I want to point, I love one here from Maddie Morgs when discussing Sovereign Glue, not to be confused with the Sovereign Goo, King of the Slimes. Consider it in DnDTime.
Bum, bum, bum.
I love that so much. And so Max Meixter was, I can tell Max Meixter is already excited about getting right into the nitty gritty on his. But one thing I'd like to talk about before we step right into the item that Max is going to be making, just some of the other Bartholomew's Choice items we've done and how we as designers try and reflect these ideals in our own Bartholomew's Choices.
Yeah.
Which I'll talk about now. And I think like the first thing I think that me and you always do, Jeremy, you were talking before about breaking the mold. That's something that I think we've stuck with very firmly as we've gone through and done our Bartholomew's Choices.
Absolutely. So Bartholomew's Choices, like Pete mentioned, they're legendary magic items. They're commissioned by a player for a specific character, and they are personalized items. You know, if you're out adventuring playing D&D and you roll on a loot table and you get a Vorpal sword, that might be cool and all, but if no one in your party uses a longsword, it might not feel as cool to you. These items are specifically meant for specific characters. And like Pete was saying, we like to break the mold. We like to take one specific concept for the item that is its core feature, the core thing it does that cannot exist by default in Dungeons and Dragons, and make that what makes it special. Oftentimes, this will require special mechanics or special rules on how it works and interacts in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's the kind of deal that it takes a lot of effort to balance it correctly and to make it both fun for the player, but also fun for people playing with the player.
Yes, because there's one thing you never want to do, which is make something that invalidates other players with its power. That's one of the basic ideas behind balance. But there's more to it than just simply like being strong. There's also very basic things like if we put too many, for example, options on a character, then that character will start to feel like, well, why do we need a bard in our party if their item also gives them the same inspiration that a bard could do? And that's just like a side thing on the item. So it's not just the raw, plus 10 to hit ridiculous. It's also, the range of the item.
Well, and that's part of why breaking the mold is so important for these legendary items, is that way you're not stomping over something else. It might be the hardest to design, but you're not going to be, stomping all over the bard's inspiration party because your item doesn't do that. It does something totally unique and special.
Indeed.
And speaking of unique and special, thank you for resubscribing for 10 months. It's a long time, my friend.
Thank you so much,
we appreciate your support.
That is 100% true. Thank you so much. And as another thing, we talked a lot about like the story and finding ways to make interesting design. The way that we do that in D&D time is, well, we ask our players to do the design. We say, what is this item for your character? What does it mean to you? What cool things does it have, and what does it mean to your character? And then we build around that. So we kind of cheat in that regard, but I'll tell you this, usually people think it fits very well for their character by the end.
And here's an interesting little note for any of you people out there who run your own games, which I'm sure many of you do. You don't have to ask a player to know what they want.
Yes.
In D&D time, we do. We talk, we consult with our players before we even begin to dream about what their Bartholomew's choice is going to be. But a lot of the times, Pete and I start adding some stuff. We're like, oh, you know what? They would love this. And sure enough, they love that.
I would say 100% of the time.
Yeah, almost every time. And I'll tell you, as a dungeon master, you're going to know what your players like. And the key things that I like to look for are, what does my player keep trying to do but fail at? That's a really good thing to make sure the item does well.
Yep.
And what does my player do really, really well and just love doing well? That might be killing dragons, specifically dragons. And if that's the case, you probably want to put something about dragons on that legendary item that you're making for them. They might not know it's special for them, but when they find the legendary Sword of Dragon Killing, they're going to be pretty happy about finding that because they love killing dragons.
Yeah, in the long-term campaign, for sure. Just that's also one of the advantages of these things in the long term is the ability to just kind of sneak them in, and the players won't even know that they're for them, and then pick them up.
Exactly.
But
pick up on those kind of things over time.
Indeed. But one of the advantages of the way we do things is that the players do know that we're designing them for them, and we get to make exactly what people want. I think so far, does it still say, I don't know if we took it off, does it still say on Bartholomew's Choice, satisfaction guaranteed?
On the website?
Yeah.
I think it does. I think there was almost one exception, and then we fixed it. Maybe it doesn't. Pete, it might not say satisfaction guaranteed anymore.
It used to say that at one time. And then at the bottom it said satisfaction not actually guaranteed. So it's all good. That's early D&D time lore.
Some good memes.
Jeremy, do you want to start talking a little bit now? Or is there anything else you want to say on this before we start getting into what we're going to be kind of working with today?
I think we can just kind of dive right into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're going to be talking about a lot of ideas that could be cool. Mm-hmm. And I think our first step is, because there's so much we can do with this item, is what we can't do. So let's dive right in.
Well, for starters, let's just say what we're working with. I want to thank Max really quick, by the way. It's very cool of you to let us do this here on the stream and kind of hash things out live. Because I think it's fun for people to see kind of our process and the way we think about this stuff. And also, well, we just appreciate you kind of letting us use it, because I know it's definitely, the Bartholomew's Choice is, to a degree, I think, a personal thing that each character must invite on. So thanks again. Yes, no problem, Pete and Jeremy.
And just beyond that, because I think people have this strange disillusionment, Pete, that you and I function as a singular entity, that we are the Borg, we are one, and we are on the same wavelength. When we're designing these Bartholomew's choices, 9 out of 10 times, Pete and I are on totally different wavelengths.
We completely disagree on every fundamental idea.
And, you know, eventually we come together and we have so there's going to be a lot of discussion, probably, I imagine, today between Pete and I about what we can do, what we can't do, and there's a really good chance we're going to disagree, and that's part of the design process.
Yeah, for sure.
If one of us disagrees, it means there's probably a red flag in there somewhere.
As a little bit of behind the scenes history, the way me and Jeremy designed the first ever Bartholomew's choice, which was called the Frozen Crown, we both...
Whoa, the Crystal Collar, Pete.
The Crystal Collar, that's the Fox's other Bartholomew's choice. The Crystal Collar, my apologies. The Crystal Collar, me and Jeremy both built the Crystal Collar individually, and then we're like, we'll both do it, and then see if we can smash them together and what ideas work and don't. And we both built the same item in completely different ways, and it was impossible to do it the way that we did it.
Yeah, basically we both built the exact same thing. The mechanics were completely different, and it was impossible to smash it into one thing. And it was just like, ugh! And it was very challenging.
So we've kind of evolved a method where we'll kind of let one of us take the lead on a given item, and then we'll give feedback back and forth.
One person gets to take the trial draft, then the other person edits that, and then we talk about it, and then it goes back as a first draft to the player.
Today's our first time
draft that the players see.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Also, this will be the first time, I think, since then that we're just going into this at the same time.
Yeah, really. Whew. All right.
So let's do it.
Yeah, you want to start, Pete?
Yeah, please do. So,
the item in question today, and this is the first thing we always ask our players, or if we're designing for a player, it's what do I want? What does that player want? Well, in this case, we're asking Max, what do you want? What do you want this item to be for your character? And the answer in this case is, well, another character. It is Sarge, the Sovereign. So this is a throwback to our Pocket Creatures episode. It was a spur-of-the-moment event that we ran, 2-3 months ago at this point?
That sounds about right.
It was a blast. I absolutely loved that adventure. I think those adventures, I think a lot of people really like them, actually. It's a great second adventure.
Yeah, such a strange coincidence there, but sorry, go on.
Yeah, and this was a character. So the way that started is each of the characters in the games got to have their own pocket creature, their own little pocket monster-like creature that would be their friend and fight with them and for them.
Yes.
And in that game, Max and Max's character, Michael Verity, really fell in love with their companion, Sarge, who is I actually do not know the Pokemon that it's based off of, but they've got blades for arms, and it's not Scyther.
I'm sure Matt will type it in a moment, but I looked it up earlier. Pawniard.
I do not know Pawniard.
It's kind of like a little. It's a little.
I do know Pawniard. We're gonna what? We're gonna put Pawniard on here.
He evolves into.
Got him.
He evolves into Bisharp.
Holy shit! He's got blade arms and blade head and blade body.
He's got a lot of blades. You should also probably throw out Bisharp, because I think that would be because Sarge was based on that, and Sarge evolved. So I think it would be based on the evolution of Pawniard, what we're working with now.
Oh, Bisharp looks very different. Bisharp's like a dude.
Bisharp is a dude.
Okay, cool. So this is a really interesting thing right here. A lot of the times when we have this very, very just beginning concept, I know for me, Pete, I don't know about you, but my ideas start to run wild right off the bat.
I am actually laser focused on the first thing.
Then
I have a very clear idea for the first thing, and that is, how could this possibly work? Not like any of the details of
Mhm.
how is the character going to interact with the world, and how is it going to, does it have attacks, like what does it do? I just think like, how do we get you to have a Pokemon? And I
Mhm.
think in this case the answer is we need to design a Pokeball for this guy to go in and out of, and
Yeah,
that's
I
probably the item.
completely agree. I think you're right. I think the
And
item's gotta be the Pokemon.
yes, so the item, because I think that's something that we allow a lot of flexibilities on this, but I think this is something that we're probably in agreement on, is the thing that we make does have to be an item, like something
Yeah.
tangible that's an object. And so in this case, like a living creature we don't want to do as just the item. So we're going to call the item the Pokeball, but really it's a living creature that's just inside of it. But it lets us
Yeah.
play around with the mechanics of the Pokeball.
So that's the first thing, and I completely agree. I think that's a really great starting point. Now, or I'm sorry, Pocket Sphere, Pete. Let's be
Yes,
real.
the pocket sphere is what we will end up calling it.
But you know what else I just thought of? And this is something that happens at least with me all the time. I see these little ideas and I get an inspiration. And seeing these two dudes standing next to each other, I'm just thinking at some point, if he hasn't already evolved, we should put it on the item that Sarge gets to evolve.
Ah, yes.
This is another thing that we like to do for our legendary mythic item. They'll have their normal abilities, and then they'll have a special ability for the character that will
Mhm.
oftentimes become more powerful as that character gets more powerful. And the concept behind that is, yes, it's a legendary item. It belonged to Michael Verity in this case, and it's still very good in other people's hands, but it's never quite as good as it would be in its owner's hands. It's like Excalibur will never quite be Excalibur in someone's hands that it's not King Arthur. That's just, it's part of what makes Excalibur Excalibur.
Absolutely.
If there were another Pocket
Uh,
Creatures episode, I would not complain. Matty Morgs, maybe we'll have another Pocket Creatures
that's
episode at some point.
good to know. D Forgotten agrees. When I hear that, I think to myself, I mean, if the people want it.
Pocket Creatures Jolto. Excellent.
I mean,
We'll have it in the power plant.
Jeremy and I are very easily influenced, by the way, on most weekly adventures.
That's ridiculous. I
Uh,
was not planning to do it. And anyway,
I was already making a Sovereign Goo adventure in my mind.
I had one of those yesterday. I saw something excellent in the chat on Discord, and I was like, "Oh, I should run an adventure about that like this week."
So
Anywho,
yes, so
back
I'm
on
thinking
track.
for a core design. We designed it as the Pokeball, so the item's not going to be called Sarge. I think is just a very rough idea. We might come up with something cooler later. And obviously, Max, if you have ideas for this too, holler at us. But like Sarge's Pocket Sphere is
Yeah, that's a much better one.
a better, I
But
think, a better
you know
starting
what?
spot.
I think that's a cool idea, but why would we call it Sarge's Pocket Sphere when we can call it Michael Verity's Sarge or something? You know what I mean?
Michael Verity's. Well, I feel like
it's like Lieutenant Surge's riot shoe, right?
Well, I feel
we
like
gotta go with the theme.
but I feel like we do want to specify that the item is the Pocket Sphere. It's somewhere in the title.
Oh, we can, instead of martial weapon, we'll just say Pocket Sphere.
But I feel like not in the, because I mean, look at the look at the convention as of thus far.
Yeah.
Which is to say that all of them are things, which I think is a good thing. We're just saying that, like the sword, the frozen crown, the rock, the crest, Vertigus, which is just the proper noun for the thing that it is, Moon Dancer, collar.
What if we called it Michael Verity's Pocket?
I can get on that. I'm 100%.
Okay, we can be on the same page. All right.
Yeah. And also, if we come up with another cool name further down the road for like what a cool, like the Master Ball equivalent of Michael Verity's Pocket Sphere.
There we go. We'll put it in parentheses, Sarge. Perfect. We're already off to a raring start. Another thing we always do, and we do this last, is we come up with a cool quote for the thing. I don't know what the hell we're gonna do with that.
Max says the Sovereign Sphere, which I honestly really like, because that's what it's called, is the Sovereign.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Bop. That's a great name for it.
I agree.
All right. Pocket Sphere Legendary requires attunement by. What does it require attunement by?
Well, this one I think. I think the sphere.
A pocket creature master.
The sphere requires attunement by a pocket creature master or trainer or champion or whatever we want to go with. But I think the actual when we get into the when we get into the real deal of it, it will require attunement by Michael Verity because it's not like Sarge is going to listen to anyone other than Michael Verity.
Oh, I love that. You know what we should do? So in this item, and this is where I'm already thinking of breaking the mold here. In these items, we have this top part above this bar, and what'll happen here is we'll put the normal abilities of the item there. And in this bottom part below the bar, we'll have the special abilities that only the player can have. I think the idea is in this top bar, maybe they have to roll like charisma checks against Sarge to control him. You don't have enough badges to train me.
I got a fly on my screen.
I love this. I love that idea.
Yeah, and that was actually a mechanic that we did use in the event. At least I did. I don't know if you played around with that one at all.
Nope, not at all.
But it does actually fit the event, the history behind Sarge as well, so I think it works.
So if you are Michael Verity, again, sorry, require no ability checks to command Sarge. And I think that just might be everything that goes below the line. I think we just say if you want to use one of Sarge's abilities, it's an ability check. That might be okay. This is really devastating our convention already.
I think what else is going to go below the line is Sarge. Just like where we would put most of the stuff for Sarge.
Stat block. Yeah,
because totally I think, and that's another question we want to do is: do we want to express Sarge as a stat block, or do we want to rather define Sarge by the things that he can do?
I think we define Sarge by the things that he can do,
and that's going to be a hang up, and we'll have to. That's going to go into the logistics of how do we make Sarge work, and that's one that we're going to be playing around with for a while. But there's probably going to be a feature called Sarge.
Let's start at the top here, without doing anything else for the character or for the item and character, I guess. Let's go through what Max wants out of the character because we asked a couple specific questions. This is a very, very unique item. A lot of our existing Bartholomew's choices are a lot more straightforward than this. This adds a very large dimension to the game.
This may be the most niche one yet.
So, it's comparatively, there's one other Bartholomew's choice that it stacks up against, and that is the Crystal Collar, our very first one.
Yep.
And to be frank, Pete and I tend to look toward the Crystal Collar as our kind of benchmark for power can not go above this level.
This is our line. And there are definitely times,
we waver around it.
Yeah, we've gone in touch above, touch below, but we try and keep it there.
Yeah, because it works differently, right? If an item has more power over longer periods of time, where it's got less upfront impact, we can increase its overall strength. Whereas if an item has a lot of upfront impact, there's a hard limit to how much that can be.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of stuff that we try and consider as being. So let's just go through and read through. We asked Michael a couple of questions, or Max a couple of questions here about his character. And I think it's important we go through them and talk about them and how that it influences our thought process.
And while you do that, I was going to say, if you want to read some of these, I'm going to just start writing out a little bit of baseline text for what those to govern the sphere, because I think that's going to be relatively straightforward beyond action economy and that kind of stuff.
So, what do you want to get out of Sarge as a follower and or companion? You're looking for combat effectiveness, out of combat helpfulness, or sentience and personality. Max mentioned that he's looking for a little bit of all three. It makes sense if he had all the qualities. He's essentially an evolved Blade Arms, which is our friend over here, Blade Arms.
Blade Arms!
From the Pocket Sphere Adventure. Yeah, so right off the bat, we're going to be considering, all right, combat effectiveness, that's obvious. The guy's got blades for arms. He's got to be useful in combat.
Yeah.
Out of combat helpfulness? Okay. Maybe, I think, just looking at the creature for a minute and thinking about, especially looking at the evolved version, I'm seeing this character as very much like a commander kind of creature. And so maybe its out of combat effectiveness will be in helping allies in some way. And that's a really good way to shift some of the power off of the creature and onto other characters. Because it's always good to be able to, if you make an item that's overpowered or a class that's overpowered, but it's overpowered because it makes other people better, it's not bad. A great example is like the Order Domain Cleric from Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. Very powerful, but it's powerful because it makes everyone else better, and that just makes people happy. So that's kind of my next thought process for out of combat stuff. And then sending personality, okay. Pete and I are going to have to come up with something that both of us can run there that won't be too frustrating. Do you have any ideas for that right off the dome, Pete? Because I have one.
After you, please.
My thought was, well, he can only say his name, Sarge, or whatever we call him. If we don't call him Blade Arm.
I think Max is very much on the same vein. I remember Max mentioning to me personally, at least, that he wanted to be able to understands common but cannot speak would be the language.
Yeah. And maybe one of the features of the item is that the owner of the item can understand Sarge. Would be really nice.
I think so as well.
That way, Pete and I just have to say sovereign, or Sarge, and then we can translate. Sarge and we can says this.
Yeah, exactly. Which is fun, and also, these are the kind of things that we'll put on the item that won't add a lot of direct impact, but start to make the item feel cool and like it's blended with the world.
And what actually was really important about that is it takes a lot of the burden off Pete and I. Whenever you're making a sentient magic item, you gotta consider that you have to now play that sentient magic.
Yep.
In this case, that magic item is like a literal creature. And so you really need to weigh the power of that. Not the power of that as much even as just like how much of your energy that's going to take. Because that's just another thing you have to juggle while you're DMing. Especially with two DMs, with Pete and I. That's a big deal. I really like that. Just he says his name and we translate. Is a really good break.
Absolutely.
Our next point here are multiple special and unique abilities, Dark Pulse, Leer, etc., a main design goal of Sarge. So popping up, we can see Max created actually a stat block, which actually is a pretty nice stat block for like a creature, for like a monster. We could use this stat block in any game that we ran. I mean, and it would be fine. There are a few minor mechanical differences that Pete and I might, change here and there, but pretty solid overall, honestly. And let's look at what Shadow Pulse and Leer are, because obviously this is tied into Pokemon, right?
Yep.
He's got 4 abilities. He's got Blade Arm, Rend,
which is
he's got a Headbutt.
Hit with Blade Arms, hit with Head.
Yeah, and it does some damage and knocks things back. Shadow Pulse, which does some necrotic damage, and I see Max put a recharge on it. We'll talk about recharge when we get to balance.
Yeah, that might be a little tricky, but we'll see.
And Leer, which, frightens a creature.
It's a frightened effect.
These all make a lot of sense to me. And Max was saying, somewhat, yes, some of these abilities and the features of Gay Sarge either make a lot of sense, oh wow, we're on the page, or were present in the aforementioned adventure. So, yeah, basically, when we're going through this, we're going to have to consider that we probably want to stick to 4 key abilities for Sarge. Makes sense. He's a pocket creature. Pocket creatures have 4 key abilities. Cool. based on Pokemon. And we're going to want to make those really, I think, where the meat of Sarge's power comes in. And yeah, so we were talking earlier about, like, do we want combat effectiveness? And I think all of the combat effectiveness is going to need to go into those 4 abilities.
Yeah.
And if we can just say Sarge can only use these 4 abilities in combat, I think that would be okay, because that's A, we're mirroring the Pokemon deal, and B, we can put more power into those. You know, if Sarge can't grapple people, which he's got blades for arms, guys, but you know, if Sarge can't grapple people, great. That's something that Pete and I can say, all right, because he can't grapple people, we can put more power into his blade arm attack, for example, or his headbutt. So we're going to be thinking about that as we go. Anything to add to that, Pete?
I am mostly on the same page as you, honestly. Also, I've been focusing a bit on. I'm dual purposing it right now.
I want to just catch up on the chat real quick, unless Pete wanted to.
I'd be happy to. Which were a couple of ideas here. The first of which was, I think V-Bunny was saying, define them by his stat blocks and remove the things that are special if attuned to the creature, and make it to where it can only be attuned to Max. Yeah, that might be a direction that we go, where we give either it's just like a very simple, it can just attack, but if Max is attuned to it, it can do more things. That might end up being the direction we go. We'll have some options there.
I see.
Sword code here
evolves into Man-at-Arms.
Blade arms, Man-at-Arms. Man-at-Arms, if you say it fast, it does sound like a Pokemon. Couldn't you picture Man-at-Arms? It would be more of a T. V-Bunny says out of combat is simple. Make it work similar to familiar while out of combat. That
maybe not a bad idea.
That could actually work. That might be a mechanic we go with. Next question says not a blade arms, a sovereign, of course.
Well, and the biggest challenge to out of combat is the help action. How far can Sarge help Michael? And we're going to talk about that a lot when we really start getting into it. And that's something that's not defined for familiars. Can familiars help you with a history check?
And in Sarge's case, the answer
emoji
will probably be no, but we'll see where it goes.
I saw there were some other great ones. Wait, can Sarge use a help action in combat or take the dodge or dash actions? We're gonna come to that, V-Bunny, when we get to there. If we want to maybe go in that direction.
And I see Max was looking at my text and saying, I wanted to say this, which the answer to that is, of course.
Absolutely, yeah, of course. Absolutely. Well, but 100% put that in there.
That's the thing we always do for Bartholomew choices. Anywhere that people want a flavor adjustment, just yes, of course. Whatever you want it to say is what it will say.
Another comment a little while back from Swordco here in the chat I wanted to bring up, because I think it's actually really important here, is Sarge begins acting like Ash's Charizard when he first evolved. That's very interesting, because one of the things that we always do with these items, or we often do with these items, there are a few that don't have them, is we like to have, at level 11, Sarge gets, or this item gets this extra ability. At level 17, that ability becomes this. At level 20, it becomes this super great. And that could be a really, because with the pocket creature, you have first evolution, second evolution, and in that case, that's where it ends for us. As far as I'm aware. Is there like a mega evolution for Sarge? I don't know. I don't know enough about this Pokemon or Pokemon in general to really say that. But maybe we can make a baby Sarge. Anyway, in case Michael Verde ever is D-level. But what I was saying, that's a really cool break point, Sword, of a way that we could add another level in between the full power evolved and full power first stage Sarge. It'd be cool, a cool middle. All right, well. Sarge acting like a Charizard, that's cold. Oh boy, I guess Max is not a fan of Sarge being Charizard. Well, he's not a Charizard, he's a Blade Arm. Or he's a Blade Sovereign. That's a great pun, by the way.
Blade Arms.
Let's keep
Sovereign. That's probably what Sovereign sounds like.
Sovereign. Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. It's kind of like a scyther, but not.
Yeah, it
not
starts
quite
off.
scyther.
It starts off bleed arms, and then sovereign.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah.
The next question we had was, do you want to mimic Pokemon as much as possible, or is it more important that you just get a new buddy in the form of and of course, you want a new buddy, but you also are looking for a lot of cues from Pokemon. Of course, the Pocket Creature's Adventure is what inspired Blade Arms in the first place, and he based it off of Pawniard. Many of the features that he put in this original character sheet, which here, are based off of the Pokemon equivalent, such as immunity to psychic and poison damage. So let's think a little bit. Right off the bat, the uh-ohs that come up there are the word immunity. The word immunity is always a big uh-oh for design, especially in 5th edition D&D.
Yes.
And especially actually, and it's okay in 5th edition D&D. I think you can do it in a long-term campaign. I don't think you can do it in D&D because we are such short, concise episodes. Immunity is the way that one character just shits on everyone else.
Yeah,
and that's something we want to avoid at all costs.
That was actually, it's funny enough because I was talking to Max before this, and that was something that he specifically went out of his way to say, like, I really like specifically the 2 immunities he has to these respective things. So if we do end up finding a way to make it work, it will be because we've done something to justify, like, for example, a way that I can see maybe being able to justify it, which is like if Michael goes down, the blade arms pops back into his pocket sphere, so it's not like the Sovereign can come out and just continue to beast an encounter after everyone's already been taken out, if he's immune, which is a first thought, but it will be very hard to fit those in. I agree for sure.
Well, as a second thought, right, what we could do is, I mean, that was your first reaction. Here's my first. Again, Pete and I always come at this from radically different angles. Pokemon. What are the first thing I think of when I think of Pokemon? I'm like a Pokemon noob.
Resistances?
I've played Pokemon Red. That's it. That's all. I played 48 straight hours of Pokemon Red and then promptly died for 2 days. But that's all I've played. And the only thing I can think of is super effective.
Not very effective.
Or not very effective.
And
what if for Sarge, we added a second level of resistance that quartered the damage for not very effective, or quadrupled the damage for super effective? I don't know if there's anything that's super effective against it.
That might be a thing. I actually brought up, we did think the same way, because I brought up the same idea. I was like, well, Max, what about resistances? And because we talked about these, he's like, he specifically is immune to those damage types, Max said, and he really likes the immunity.
But we're going beyond regular resistance. This isn't just
and maybe that
resistance.
and maybe Max,
we're breaking the mold with ultra resistance.
Also, I will point out as a double thing to say before we put on a quarter resistance, do you feel like quartering math?
I don't care. That doesn't make a damn difference to me. Dividing by 2 versus dividing by 4 is the same thing to me, Pete. You're a math major.
I know.
Don't you dare try to tell me one's harder than the other.
One is decidedly easier, and that is, Jeremy, what is, okay, if I asked you for what half of 113 is versus what a quarter of 113 was, you would get me a half much faster than you would a quarter.
Well, no, because I'd go half 113, go round down to 112, 66, 33.
Which means you took longer because you had to half twice instead of once. You literally said the half number before the quarter one.
It's trivial.
Also, do we round down to it? Aside the point, you're right.
Regardless, at that point, they're basically the same thing anyway. Now that I'm thinking about it. What's 100? Like
Max is saying. Max is saying you might be okay as a compromise. The quarter thing, we would be okay with if we ended up doing that.
Yeah, but
so that's a good option.
What's the difference between a quarter damage and no damage? Really not that much.
Very little. In a lot of cases, if you take 3 damage, it's the same thing.
So what I'm going to do is, based on your conversation, just going to bold those as if we can make that work at any, if we can make it work, let's do it.
Yeah. We'll try. But it's good to know that you're okay with that as like a
as a backup. Yeah. So let's move on to our next topic because we're kind of getting caught up in the weeds there. Actually, I don't want to move on because I have another point about that. Mimicking Pokemon, I think a cool thing to think of. So, actually, this goes into the next topic. Do you want Sarge to be able to act independently on his own, or are you okay with him being more of another option that Michael Verdi has access to? And Max was very much of the opinion that Sarge should be able to act on his own. I get that. I totally dig it. It makes sense. I also see it as it working the other way around, because in Pokemon, you always command the Pokemon to do the thing. But I think back to the show, the original Pokemon. Pikachu's always going and doing Pikachu stuff on his own, and I see that very much as like a companion Pokemon that we're going for here. And this made me think back, well, how do we limit that? Because we can't just give a second character that's as powerful as Michael Verdi, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that brought me back to that question 3. We want to mimic Pokemon. What if we give them like power points?
Oh, you're thinking PP.
Yeah, if we give him PP, and then he runs out eventually.
I was kind of
I'm out of power.
I was starting to think that same way, and we could function it. I mean, we'd flavor it as.
This is weird. We're never on the same wavelength.
We could flavor it as PP, but we could make it function very similarly to how we would do
charges.
Yeah.
Pardon. But yeah, pardon my my rather rude interjection there. Sorry, Pete.
No, you coughed. There's nothing you could do about it.
Very coffee. But yeah, I think that's a really good, at least kind of conceptual starting direction, because there has to be a limiter on this. Sarge is going to have a pile of hit points, which is really powerful. Just more hit points is good. He's going to have attacks, so he's going to do more damage, increase the damage per round. So Sarge is going to need to have some limiter to it. And if we always want Sarge to be out, which goes into our next question, is it critical that Sarge is always out and about, or is a temporary summon something to be satisfied with? Harkening back to the Crystal Collar, we have Levi, which is a character, the imp that is empowered into a higher order devil through that item. And that's a temporary thing. It lasts for 1 minute. That's it. And there have been times where the character Selcrest has been burned because they've used it just a little too early. And then when they needed Levi later, didn't have Levi. And I mean, it hasn't been the end of the world, obviously, but there are limits that, limiting the time that a creature can be available limits its power and its effectiveness. And since that doesn't seem like Max wants here talking to him, Michael definitely seems to want Sarge to be able to come out pretty much on beck and call. We are going to need that higher level limiter. And I think PP is a really cool way to do it. And actually, Michael in chat saying, Max says, I like the idea of using power points for some abilities, but I think some basic abilities should always be readily available just in case. Yeah, and maybe we use some sort of action economy to limit that.
Yeah, I think that would probably be, things like attack with arm is probably something that in the context of D&D, we probably wouldn't limit that.
Yeah, maybe that would be like a bonus action or something.
Yes.
Whereas like Leer or Shadow Pulse might cost more people. Now, obviously, the PP costs are not going to be based on the actual game.
Yeah, because that would be crazy. It would just be like, that would be like,
for the
yeah, I feel like, well, even the most powerful abilities, you can use them at least 5 times.
Pete. And of course, Max was also saying, if Sarge reaches 0 hit points, he returns to the Pocket Sphere and can't be used to the remainder of the adventure. Oh, that's perfectly fine. We're going to use text like a long rest, probably. But yeah, absolutely. Sarge doesn't die. Sarge returns to the pocket. That's just more fun. So that's what we're going to do.
Yep. And to briefly go over kind of what I've put together here so far, and tell me if you're on roughly the same page for me with
we have
Sphere.
One more question, Pete.
Oh yeah, well, let's do that. Sure.
Just to finish these off, and then we can go.
Man, do one? I haven't done one yet.
Pete, please go ahead.
Are there any other major playstyle goals that you have for this choice that are not covered in the previous questions? And if so, what are they? And Michael's answer was he has kind of three things that he likes Michael to do. Those are, one, he likes to be tanky, still be able to do some damage, but kind of has the emphasis on tanky. But if he has to, we'll fight. He likes to kind of engage in diplomacy when he can. I know Max as a player has always relied very heavily on your old persuasion checks, trying to talk down and out of battle. So that's kind of the other thing he focuses on. And then the last one he picked was he likes to take kind of a leader in a more tactical role, which is why he picked Battle Master, he said. So he thinks that Sarge could interact with any or all of those. He would kind of be happy with.
V-Bunny's asking a great question. Do the moves all share one set of PP, or do they each have their own? That's the question we're going to have to figure out when we start designing, V-Bunny. Probably they share a pool, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's more likely, but we don't know that for certain until we build it.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting response, getting back to that question you just read, Pete, from Max about that. I totally get the three kind of levels that that Michael Verde likes to act on. But I think I see Sarge a lot more as that kind of tanky martial character. With maybe that leadership deal.
Yeah, then less so the talkative kind of charisma based.
Yeah, he might be helpful for like intimidation stuff.
Maybe.
Just because he's got blades for arms. I really like the idea because the two things that Max put here, right, are leadership and I'm going to emphasize tactical role.
Yeah.
Right. And the combat effectiveness. What would be really cool, and he specifically mentioned the Battle Master here, would be cool is if the Battle Master abilities that Michael has would work better or be able to also be used by Sarge.
That's a very interesting idea. I like the idea of definitely playing around with because one of the things
the team play tactics, right? He's fighting with his companion.
And now that
go ahead.
I was gonna say, now that you are kind of going down this route, and I really like that direction. The thing that I would be more interested in doing is in the first half, and now the first half of the document being how the pocket sphere works and how Sarge and who Sarge is. And then the second half of it being how Michael Verity plays in with Sarge and what he does.
Oh, that's a great one.
Yeah.
I really, really like that. Because the biggest issue I always have, I've run a fair amount of Dungeons and Dragons at this point. Pete, you have too. And for characters like Beastmaster Rangers is a great example, and Familiar, or Summoned Creature. It feels like either you play or the creature plays,
but you're not working together.
Exactly. There's not a lot of team play. Exception probably is the Paladin with Find Speed, because the Paladin, when they cast spells that target them, those spells also affect their mount. And I think that might be a cool thing to tie in to this as a cool way of making it more interesting.
And
making it more fun.
Crowley in chat says, yeah, we really want to engage in some team fight tactics. Max Mike is also saying, also I could use my own Battle Master abilities in tandem with Sovereign, example, Commanding Strike, and have him make the reaction attack.
Exactly.
That's definitely true. That's something that we will put in. That is something we'll put in for sure. But to talk to you a little bit so far about what I'm doing with just the baseline Pocket Sphere ability, let's look at the top. And so far we have just a couple sentences on flavor. We do like a little bit more flavor on these usually than normal, and we might even add a touch more than this, but this is just a starting line. This pocket creature sphere was kept by Michael Verity after the pocket creature craze swept Central City. It is a sphere containing not only a powerful combatant, but a true friend of Michael Verity's. Whoop. There we go. And then to define how the pocket sphere might work, and we'll maybe change the action economy on this, is as an action, you may toss the pocket sphere at an unoccupied space you can see within 30 feet of you, summoning Sarge to that space. Immediately after throwing it, the sphere flies back to your hand. As an action, while Sarge is out of the pocket sphere, you may activate it again to return him to the sphere.
Yeah. Do you want to say action there?
Or for the return?
Yeah, is there really a reason to limit that to an action? Because it's an action to toss Sarge out. Which, right now, that's an important note here. We make that an action. If we make that an action, that means everything happens a turn later, which means we can put a little more oomph on Sarge. because it has that turn delay to start coming into effect.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually very comfortable making the return a bonus action.
Yeah, I think that's totally fine. I think that's a really good idea. That way you can return Sarge and then throw him somewhere else in the same turn if you really wanted, which just seems like cool to me. It's like Sarge can't quite make it that 60 feet, but wait. I think it's neat.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a very clever use of it. I certainly wasn't thinking that when I was writing this, but that's cool.
So I think that is a really good, and actually we want to type out the word feat, but that's just convention there.
What were you doing?
I just typed out the word under 30.
What did I do?
You used FT period.
Where did you? Oh, it's not changing on my screen. Weird.
Oh, that's because it has signed me out of Google. No one look at my screen. That's funky. Google, what are you doing? We're gonna sign back in really quick.
Also, you're right. It's feet.
All right, we're back now. Hey, boys.
There you go.
That's weird that it signed me out there.
And I put it in 3 kind of different indentations here, but as we put more stuff on this, we might want to combine this into one more kind of concise thing. So I think the other thing that we're going to define in this top section, I think the other thing that we're going to put in this top section is basically Starge's, I want to say stat block, but not necessarily stat block. And have we kind of made a decision yet on which way we want to go in that particular regard?
That's a great question. So let's move down and look at Sarge.
Yeah.
Right. Sarge, the Sovereign. We have decided that, consistent with what Max is really looking for out of Sarge, Sarge is going to be able to freely be released in the pocket sphere or brought back into the pocket sphere without really any limit to that, right? As long as he's conscious. We're fine with that?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
So, right off the bat, what stats is Sarge going to need? He's going to need an armor class and hit points.
Yep. He's going to need
speed.
His...
Is he going to need saving throws?
I think he's probably not going to have save proficiencies.
I was just thinking we can just give him Michael Verity saving throws. When Sarge roll saving throw, he uses the stats of the wielder of this.
Yeah. I think that we could take a page, and I don't know which thing I'm thinking of that uses this convention, but there's something that its ability scores are all 10, but instead of that, we could do its ability scores are this, except for its strength, which is a little more awkward. I'm also would be okay with maybe doing a proficiency scaling on those.
I was thinking we don't even need to worry about ever saying what the proficiency bonus is. Because I think if we start getting into what the ability scores are and proficiency bonus, we get to a point where it's a stat block. We might as well have a stat block.
Yeah.
Right? So I was just thinking, rather than doing any of that, if Sarge rolls saving throw, he uses the bonus of his wielder, of the wielder of his pocket. So he's got to roll an intelligence saving throw. Michael Verity can use Michael Verity's stats to roll that saving throw for Sarge.
Are we thinking that's going to be true for everything he does, including his attacks? And
well, the thing is, I think the attacks we can maybe be a little more specific with. Might be an all right idea. Like, okay. When it comes to
it's definitely crisp. It's definitely crisp. It's a little weird in the flavor of it, but it's a good design.
Yeah, well, because I'm just thinking if we can take as much out of it as possible.
No,
we
I'm with
need
you
an
on
armor class and a hit point total, a speed. We got all the saving throws covered. We don't actually give him any skills, but we can give him maybe some abilities that
reflect what those skills do.
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe when Sarge uses the help action to help a creature make an athletics check, that creature gains a bonus to that check or something like that, or intimidation, right? If we can take those kinds of ideas and move some of that power. I
was gonna say, even just saying Sarge can help with the following checks.
Yeah, that would be a great idea. Yeah. As just a way of taking those, because I don't think Sarge is going to need to make many athletics checks. to be frank. Like, we don't want him to grapple people. He's got blade arms. That's the first problem. Second thing is, like, he doesn't need to worry about climbing ever because he can just be returned to the pocket sphere.
Yeah.
Like, weird terrain is one of the limits to Sarge. If you're playing on, like, if you're battling in a tree, Sarge is going to have a rough time. He can climb, but that's it. And I think that's a good idea. And then intimidation, well, we can wrap that skill into intimidating leader. So I think, like, I don't know. I think we can kind of tone it down into not quite a stat block, but still have a lot of the features of stat block.
I like not doing a stat block. I think that's going to be a much easier thing. It also gives us more flexibility in terms of what we do with the second half of the thing.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely. I just don't think we need it.
And I think
he's more than a stat block. He's a friend.
And on that note, we're also at time, Jeremy.
Yeah. So just so you get an idea, this was probably the fastest and most effective Pete and I have ever been with one of these. So just so you guys get, this is a long process. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of discussion. And in the end, it doesn't even
matter. Oh, sorry.
Well, all we have are a rough idea of how we're going to implement some of the features, how we're going to limit some of the abilities. Yeah. And even then, we might not be content with it once we've actually gone through and started doing it. I know we've built entire items before and scrapped them before even bothering to share them with the player because they just, it works, but it's not
what they want. It's not what they want. It's not cool. And as I think the first thing I said here in this session is never build a legendary item that when you finish, someone would look at it and go, eh.
Yeah, you don't want to, because I know one of the items we had that with was Kurogan's The Knight's Crest. Pete and I both took swings at it, and when we came together, I was like, man, Pete, yours is like really weird. I don't know. And then I was like, but mine also sucks. And I just didn't understand. And we took another swing at things and we revised some stuff. And then we're like, yeah, no, Pete's idea was definitely the right way to go with it. And we talked to Alex and boom, it was incredible.
It was good. It worked.
And I think it's actually awesome.
Now that one ended up cool. I really like where that one finished. And I like where this one's headed.
Situations. Oh, yeah. We're actually getting way further than I anticipated.
Yeah, we got a lot of strong ideas to move forward. So that's kind of where we're at on this guy. And with that, I think we're ready to move on to our next segment of the show, Jeremy.
But Pete, our next segment of the show, you mean...
Did it work?
It's not playing yet. Why are you going? Oh no! It was supposed to play the song.
I was curious if you'd remembered to put it in.
I did, but it's not playing. No! There we go.
Squeeze.
Jeremy. Did it work?
It did. It worked. All right, we're good. All right, we're on FP.
Hey!
How painfully loud was that, by the way, chat?
I made that after the I made that after the last time we did this, and I said that we needed a jingle there. Our first question tonight comes from V Bunny. The question is, how many stars are in the sky? Mind if I take this one, Jeremy?
Yep.
I know that there's more than 50.
Okay.
Which is a reference to an old movie. If any of you get that movie reference, please raise your hand. And I feel like I'm the only one that's going to get that one. Jeremy, do you have an answer that you want to give to that?
Yeah. I'll get back to you. Go to the next one.
All right. The next question is favorite superheroes. The Hulk. I like the Hulk.
Shit, the Hulk is pretty good.
What about you?
That's a very hard question. Because I think it is Moon Knight, but only because that was my code name for a long time.
Fair enough.
And to answer how many stars are there in the sky, there are 50.
Shit.
All
So
right.
wait. I was wrong. I know I said there were more than 50. I guess I messed up. The next one was favorite Fey court, summer, winter, or gloaming. I have a strong opinions on this, but my favorite Fey, I run the Feywild in a very specific way that's unique to my shit. And my favorite Fey are neither. They're the ones that are in the middle ground that kind of tread lightly between the two courts. Not quite associating what I would call the spring and fall Fey are my favorite. But if I had to pick one of those two, I would pick the Summer Fae.
I don't know shit about the Feywild. There's a reason Pete ran that talks. I don't know.
Yep, I like that shit.
I guess like hags.
That's probably Winter Court. Frog says only if you have access to the only if you have access to the creature codex by Kobold Pressed. Favorite creature from it.
Oh God, you're opening a can of worms here, bud. The Spinosaurus, and that's because I have low opinions of the creature codex from Kobold Press.
I haven't really looked at it enough to answer that. Did they put was that the Gem Dragons in that?
No, the Gem Dragons are from
Is it Colville's thing?
Yeah, it's Matt Colville's thing, which I also have low opinions of. There's some real shitty design in the creature codex.
I like the idea of the Gem Dragons, which were the neutral dragons, but that's not even the answer to that question.
Bionic Shiva says, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's not the creature codex. Is the thing I'm thinking of, Farfel? I'm sorry, maybe I'm thinking of something completely."
Oh, were you thinking of the Tome of Beasts or whatever?
Yeah, I was thinking of the Tome of Beasts. I have very low opinions of the Tome of Beasts, which I think is also by Kobold Pressed.
I didn't even know about the creature codex. I've heard it before, but I didn't know about it.
Yeah, it is Kobold. Yeah, I hated the Tome of Beasts. There was.
Matty Morgs, do you have a certain spell that you feel is extremely underrated? If so, why?
Extremely underrated.
I think.
Yeah, I do. What's your Pete?
I think Firebolt is extremely underrated.
What?
Everyone looks at Firebolt and is like, it just does damage. I get made fun of. I feel like people are always putting down Firebolt because it's the simplest cantrip, and I just like Firebolt because it's a nice flat big number.
Wow.
I feel like Firebolt gets a lot of hate, and I just like Firebolt, and I always feel like I know it's just Firebolt.
I was gonna say like an actual underrated one like Levitate, but Christ, I'll one up you. Poison Spray I think is incredibly underrated, and Acid Splash.
Acid Splash is kind of bad.
Acid Splash is incredible. 2d6s. That's the best cantrip in the game.
But only in the very
best cantrip in the game.
Why do you got against Firebolt, Jeremy?
Because Poison Spray's better. Why would I pick Firebolt when I can play Poison?
All right. You've been invited to play the game as some kind of caster, Matty Morgs asks. However, the DM tells you that your spells will be randomly chosen for you from those normally available. In exchange, the DM says she will keep an open mind about your use of the magic that you have. Do you accept the invitation to play? If so or not, what are your thoughts? I have a big if on my answer. And that question is, my answer is absolutely not if I don't know the DM. But like, for example, there are DMs I trust. Jeremy, if you told me this and you were like, no, it'll be fun, trust me, I got cool ideas for it, I'd be like, yeah, sure, I'll give it a shot. Just to trust in the DM thing for me.
Yeah, I have done that many times, unbeknownst to my dungeon masters. There's a website I really enjoy called Fast Character. I highly recommend it. I've used it for one shot, for all sorts of stuff. I'm going to post in the chat now. It's great. You can gin up an instant Dungeons & Dragons character. They randomly choose all of your shit, and you can tell them specific things that you want, if you want it to be of a certain level or class or race, and then it will just kind of come up with all the rest. I love this. I do it all the time, especially for one shots.
Was Bucket that?
No.
Because I've always thought that a lot of bucket spells felt, I guess some of them were very much tuned, but I always thought like Feign Death, for example, was one where I was like,
oh, no, I picked that.
okay.
Another highly underrated spell. I busted into a goddamn morgue that way.
You did do that. You did do that.
I did break into a morgue. Anyway, moving on to the next question from Maddie Moore. I agree with Pete, by the way. It's all about trusting the dungeon master and in the other players. You don't want other players that are going to just shit on you for having bad spells if you got dealt a bad hand.
For sure.
But I like using spells in creative and unexpected ways. So I actually that sounds really interesting. Next question, though. Is there a vivid no but moment you've had as a DM? If so, what is it? If not, what is another type of DM player haggle that you've experienced?
Anything specific come to your mind? Because I mean, I know this is something that happens constantly, but I don't like register it a lot, I feel. I'm trying to just think of like my most recent game. I had a cool one in a most recent game where a player, I do a weird thing with inspiration where I allow players to like expand the scope of some of their abilities with inspiration, where I'll be like, you want to, make minor illusion a little bit better than it could normally be, and maybe do like two things at once or something like that. You can expend inspiration to do that. And I had a player be like, can I expend my inspiration to... He wanted to basically take minor illusion and make it into hallucinatory terrain, where he's like, I make us all invisible by making the room that we're in look empty when people walk into it. And I was like, no. But you could like do that for a very small effect if you all wanted to cram into the fireplace. And then there was a very fun moment where they were all stuck into a fireplace trying to climb out of it with a very flimsy illusion and making a ton of noise, and the people in the room being kind of like, that
sounds excellent.
It was a fun little thing.
God, do I have an especially vivid no but? I'm certain that I do. I have a lot of no buts. I also have a lot of no's. And that's something that I've been working on not to do as much as a dungeon master. But I don't know. I think there is a time and place for the no. I like that you can try from Matt Mercer. I think that it's super important to really embrace that. But I think there are definitely some times where it's just no.
It's hard. There's definitely a curve for most DMs where they start on too much on either side.
Yeah.
Because you can be too permissive of a DM, absolutely.
Yeah, totally.
And I think that's actually more common than being too loose of a DM.
Well, that's because if you're too strict of a DM, your players stop playing with you because it sucks.
Yes, exactly.
And if you're too loose as a DM, your story with all of that drama just becomes, hey guys, I rolled a 20 on my charisma check. I'm the king now. And then the campaign falls apart. But at least it was fun.
That's true.
Anyway, no, I don't have a good one. Sorry.
Yeah, fair enough. Crowley asks, do you have a certain spell that you feel is overrated? If so, why?
Oh, shit. Yeah.
Power word kill.
Yeah, I mean, that's up there. Finger of Death, I think, is wicked over.
Yeah, Finger of Death isn't that great. It's cool.
Yeah, it's wicked cool. It's not that good. I'm going to be that guy and say Fireball's overrated. It's really good. But I think there are
I thought you were joking.
No. I think there, like, once you have level 4 spells, what is it? Vitriolic Sphere does the same thing that Fireball does, but it's acid damage, so it's not resisted.
That's a multiple turn.
At the beginning of their turn, they take the damage.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm just clarifying.
Yeah.
I haven't spent much time with it.
Yeah, Vitriolic Sphere is, in my opinion, for all intents and purposes, just better than Fireball at 4th level.
It's a higher level spell.
Yeah, but once you're level 9, and you're at that point where you need around one big blast, Vitriolic Sphere is the winner, I think. That's a super underrated spell. But yeah, I'd say Fireball. I think spells like Slow have multi-purpose utility that overcomes the just I blow stuff up of Fireball. It's good at what it does, but anything past what it does, it can't. It's useless.
It's a good spell.
Yeah.
The color one.
Color spray?
No.
The way we played it, yeah.
Yeah, that's an underrated spell. I don't even want to go into that one. I used to use color spray. It was overpowered the way I was doing it because I misread it.
Don't you dare say Fireball. Farfel also asks, what's your favorite creature that Wizards has published and why?
I like the... Fuck, I was about to just be so confident and then I doubled back. I like the Rakshasa. That's it.
All right.
Oh, wait, and why? They're devious shape-shifting. They're devious shape-shifting fiends. They're just, you can build a story around a Rakshasa, I feel, more than you can around a lot of other monsters. I want to give an honorable mention to the Nothic, which is my other favorite monster.
Yeah, Nothic is a great. The thing that I love about the Nothic is that they can know stuff about you that you don't even know just by looking at you, and that's great.
They're so cool.
Favorite creature. Shit. But I'm going to have to come back to that because I think there are a lot of creatures that have additional lore to them that don't exist in the creature's stat block.
Can I proffer a couple of options for you, Jeremy? The Owlbear and the Flumph.
Yeah, I don't actually like those as creatures that much. They're not interesting creatures. I love the Owlbear, but it's not an interesting creature to run.
Anything's interesting if you, regardless. Yeah, I see. I get what you're saying.
A great example of what I meant, like the Death Knight, for example, has some really cool lore that when the Death Knight dies, it always returns until its duty is complete. You can never destroy the Death Knight. That's nowhere in the stat block anywhere, but that's part of the lore of Death Knight. And so, as a creature that you just based on its abilities and to run a Death Knight in combat, not as scary.
Crowley has highlighted that he meant the question to be least favorite creature that Wizards has published.
Oh, least favorite. Oh.
I don't really have one because I feel like the thing is. No, I think I might have been me.
Whoa.
That messed it up.
Shit.
Unless he's trolling us and he put it in after, because it is an edited comment.
That changes things. What's my least favorite? I really hate the Will-O-Wisp.
It's a mean mechanic for sure.
It's rude. It's a mechanic that's just mean. And I don't like that at all. If it's not something that well, you didn't know it, so fuck you. I don't like that.
I can't think of anything because basically it's I can't. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't have ran it, and then I haven't interacted with enough to not do it.
Yeah.
As a potential answer, there's a really cool looking thing in there that are one of they live in swamps, I think, and I really like the way they look. They're green and furry, and they have a very gorilla-like posture. And I can't think of I'll look them up while you answer the next question.
Next question. What's your favorite undead creature? What makes it your favorite? Oh, undead creature. I am a big fan of the Flame Skull.
That's definitely true. You are a big fan of this Flame Skull.
But I don't just like it because it's OP. I also like it because there's the idea of how the fuck did this creature come into being? What horrible ritual must have been conducted to create a flying, flaming skull? And I mean,
Zelda.
I don't know. Sure.
For me, I like liches. It's kind of an easy pick, I think, but I just like the lich a lot. I think they're very cool. Oh wait, skeletons too.
Max Meister asks, On the relation to the talks topic, if you could make up any pocket creature, what would it be and what could it do? I would make Slowpoke and he wouldn't do anything.
If it's like which Pokemon would I base a pocket monster on? I would want to make my favorite Pokemon is Snorlax, so that's a fair. Snorlax just seems so comfortable. I feel like that's actually the reason why I want a Snorlax, is so I can nap on Snorlax's tummy while he's also napping. And that's what my pocket creature would do. It'd be basically like a big bed.
You can take a short rest by napping on Snorlax.
Yeah.
All right. We got a couple of last questions coming in. Farfel, your last question that you're typing currently is the final one tonight. Question 1, and these are all from Farfel. What are your preferred schools of magic? What do you think? I'm an illusion boy. I like illusion, and I think I like evocation.
I like conjuration, and I like divination.
Respectable choices. Are there any races you have zero interest in playing, not including Ravnica? If so, why? Oh, I don't know. I feel like I can get inspired by pretty much anything.
For me, races, I actually have a big chunk of races that I'm not into. I'm not crazy about the stranger the race is, and the less it exists, the less I'm interested in it. Okay. Because I feel like a lot of parties are usually, and part of that I think is a Phil thing. Like if everyone in my party was playing humans, I'd be 100% down to roll up as like a weird ass like Tabaxi or like Furbolg or something really weird to be the outlier. But I feel like I always find it weird when a party is made up entirely of outliers, and so I always pick the more base ones to like ground things a bit.
Okay, Pete's racing. I'm just kidding. I totally understand that feel.
Now, I found the monster I was looking for finally. That's what I've been doing this whole time.
Is it
the Quaggoth. Jeremy, why didn't you tell me? Why did you have that the whole time?
Ask.
I did. I was like, what's the one I'm thinking of? It was the Quaggoth. I fucking hate the Quaggoth because they're really cool looking and they have an awesome art for the Quaggoth in there.
Oh, their story's so bad.
They don't do anything interesting. So every time I look at it, I'm like, oh, this is so righteous. And then it's nothing. It's just, here's a monster, is kind of what the Quaggoth is. You could say that this shows up and call it a Quaggoth. So that's where I'm at. Are there any classes you have zero interest in playing? And if so, why? For me, the answer is no. I would play anything in that regard.
Any classes? I mean, I go from time to time as to what really interests me. Right now, I'm not really feeling like what? Probably.
Are you on a caster or a puncher phase?
Both. Right now, the thing I really want to do.
See, I
get inspired a lot by mechanics. A lot of the time, I get inspired by other stuff too, but I get inspired by mechanics quite frequently. I don't let like class definitions define my character. So like, I want to play an assassin that like actually assassinates people and uses magic to assassinate. So I want to play an assassin rogue that actually utilizes the assassin magic. That like the assassin like auto crit feature, but uses magic to do that. That's like what I'm feeling right now. We actually got a really strong concept for this.
This is just a thing that you want to play.
Oh yeah. I've got like a whole like it's a rough backstory, and I could play it in a lot of different settings. Like I've got like a concept for the character, a real strong one.
Will we be seeing it soon, Jeremy?
Are we evil?
That's up to you guys.
Maybe
we could do evil campaign.
Because very evil.
Last question tonight. Jeremy, you say you only played Pokemon Red, but I feel like I remember you playing the first 3 generations of Pokemon in a very short period of time. Are you sure you only played Red? I'm actually with Crowley on this one. I thought I remembered at least Silver or Gold.
Oh, you know what? I think I did. I think I played Silver and Gold in like a day each. and then I
Sure.
couldn't get the next one to work because the emulator wasn't functional.
Yeah, this was during the Twitch Plays Pokemon craze,
Yeah,
in
you're
which you've
probably
never
good
played
at
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I had never played Pokemon, and then I watched Twitch Plays Pokemon, and I'm like, oh my god, I love Pokemon.
this is amazing.
Because I
Yeah.
loved Pokemon back from my youth. But
Okay. Well, that's all
I
the
think that's about
questions that
it.
we have for tonight. Which is going to bring us, I think, around to the end of our stream. So let me start off by saying thank you all so much for hanging out and for watching us talk about first. I'll get a hail the Helix. A hail the Helix in chat from Matty Morse. Amen.
Absolutely.
Our one Lord and Savior, Bird Jesus.
Praise the almighty Helix.
Thank you guys so much for hanging out and for watching us talk about how we build Bartholomew's choices and for asking us those great questions. It was fun. It was nice doing this kind of in the public eye, so you guys can get a sense of how we actually put these things together.
Yeah, it does. It's no small effort to build all these choices and to make them what you want them to be and what they need to be. And as you can see right here, we have like nothing at the end of today, but we have we have nothing written. We have a lot of really, really strong direction. And that means a lot when it comes to
Agreed.
I think that just about is a wrap for me.
Yeah, that's it. A couple of quick announcements. Tune in on Friday to Pete and Jeremy's D&D Time. If you're not already familiar with it, it's a show that we run every Friday where we run one-shots with our community. So you can find links below to sign up and learn how to get involved and to play if you're interested in joining us for some games on the channel here. Additionally, tune in on Sunday for D&D Time Brews, where we're going to be probably putting up a little bit more polish on some of those races that we started last time we did D&D Time Brews, which I think will be pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to that as well. And then beyond that, we'll see where fate takes us.
I think the plan for Sunday, right, is finish up the Fey Touch, and then either put like a nice polish on the Grung and Fey Touched, or maybe even brainstorm some of my stuff for like, because we ended up not doing the Shapeshifter under the Fey Touch, like the Kitsune. Maybe we put something like that in there. We do something like that. We'll figure it out on Sunday, but it should be a lot of fun.
And
that's about it.
I'm Pete.
And I'm Jeremy.
And this is D&D Time Talks. Good night, everyone.
Good night.